Hello, Red Star Rebels. It's springtime for fascism in occupied California after we got to watch high-ranking Democrats cave again on the federal budget as the Trump regime continues its war on public education and the environment, even as Angelinos begin the cleanup from the LA wildfires. This is podcast season 5, episode number 5, and we are Red Star Report. For this edition, we bring you a taste of the new Cal Exit focus on California as the ultimate resistance to America's political hostility, with Californians' reasons for zero faith in Americans in our Voices for the California Nation. In tonight's excerpt from California Centric, Jeanne Rosenmeier and Timothy Volmer take us through the need for Californians to drop political narratives that only focus on the other side of America. We have a dissenting opinion from our friend at the PBR podcast, Pedro Baez, on the dangers of government shutdowns. In our Pacifica News update, we look at some recent news stories from a California resistance perspective, and tonight on Talking Points, we put to bed the old Cal Exit question: why can't California just join Canada? All this and more coming up on this episode, so hang on tight, Rebels. I'm Hal Lohr, we are Red Star Report, and this is Voices for the California Nation.
When I made my decision, there'd be a lot of people who disagreed with it. But I felt it was imperative that I do. We had an awful choice, a Hobson's choice, between a CR bill, which had no Democratic input, a continuing resolution to fund the government, and a government shutdown. As bad as the CR bill was, the shutdown, I'd say, would be 15, 20 times worse. But look who's in charge now. Musk, Doge, and probably worst of all, this man Vogt, you spell his name V-O-G-H-T, he's in charge of OMB, which determines the shutdown. They want to slash the federal government. They want to cut it in half, all so they can give tax breaks to their billionaire friends. And making it even worse, there's no exit strategy. In other words, how long do you stay in the shutdown? It's totally up to those evil people who hate the federal government, who hate all the good things that we have been able to do. One of the Republican senators told a Democratic senator, if you go into shutdown, we'll be in it for 6-9 months until we destroy the federal government.
All right. That cut clip was from Senator Chuck Schumer justifying himself on PBS. This is Voices for the California Nation, and no. Sorry to break it to you, Chuckles, but you don't get to rewrite yourself on this one. Because the facts here are that the MAGA agenda is now moving forward with no serious congressional opposition, which just tells Californians that American democracy is worse off than even we thought. And the truth here is that the Trump regime is going to dismantle the federal government no matter what you do. So far this month, we got a glowing chance to see the business-as-usual corporate priorities of congressional Democratic opposition. Californians got to watch as fearing the shutdown of America's federal Christo-fascist oligarchy government more than the runaway train continuation of America's Christo-federal fascist corporate government, key Democrats engaged in a time-honored congressional party tradition. They caved at a moment in time when support for Californians' progressive values once more had to rely on politicians 3,000 miles away who come from lesser U.S. states. The multi-millionaire senior senator from New York put his corporate donor base first, dropped to his knees, and caved without a single stipulation on financing Trump's MAGA America funding bill. So our California tax dollars are now at work funding Trump's MAGA American agenda. Thanks. You know, for better or worse, one thing the California independence movement brought to the dialogue long ago was the unveiled recognition that America was on this devolving path. So I'll apologize if I'm wrong to say it again, but given the quality of the Democratic Party's opposition to MAGA America more and more, it looks like Californians will need to stop pretending this new American normal will be over anytime soon and will end without violence. Because it's way past time our Democratic politicians stop pretending that in the 21st century, American democracy is still a thing, and that it couldn't possibly have had an expiration date. Yeah, you're not mistaken. If it can feel that bad, it's because it really vibes that bad right now. And yes, bringing little ping pong paddles to the fascist rally disguised as a State of the Union wasn't helping. Not when the DNC should have at least pretended to actually recognize where America is right now by putting up some kind of loud and tangible fight, instead of the dignified yet spineless silence of a beaten dog. Because honestly, it would even be helpful if the symbolic gesture opposition of our out-of-touch Democratic politicians could at least admit that the Democratic Party has actually lost the fight for America, even if they never have the strength to own their failures and how those failures have enabled Republicans to co-opt the United States because the DNC put the concerns of their donor base over the principles of liberty, social justice, and even democracy. I mean, seriously, the 2024 election is game over, but to listen to the Democratic Party media pundits, it's just a quirk of a never-questioned American two-party system where there's nothing anyone can really do until the next election cycle. But it's okay. The 2024 election defeat is really just a blip to be endlessly relitigated on MSNBC. Nothing to see here. We'll get them next time, and no other choice for the future are possible anyway, right? So, tough. But is it? Since 2014 now, it's been the California Independence Movement, or Cal-Exit, that's been dismissed to the political fringe by that same American Democratic Party corporate media's political experts for recognizing that the good old USA the Californians thought they knew was gone. And now, Californians find themselves just months into this wannabe American dictator's second term, and the damage he and his MAGA posse party are causing are already trending to be long-term and far-reaching catastrophic. California's air, water, earned benefits, peace, public safety, civil rights, and human rights are all under the vindictive federal government threat, with the insults, the attacks, the endless provocations, the trashing of the Constitution to continue daily in a long-planned 2025 project aimed at exactly one thing: to break all thought of resistance from progressive-minded people like the people of California and beat that resistance down into submission and oppression. But you wouldn't think that was the case if you just listened to the corporate left politicians or their embedded media who push the DNC party line. A blind party business-as-usual narrative that seems to somehow have no idea how bad things can actually get before those 2026 and 2028 elections. Elections that may not even happen if Trump and his MAGA Americans have their way about it, while Democratic Party mouthpieces act as if the people of California have all the time in the world, even while every passing day brings new fears across California's MAGA-targeted communities and fresh damage to California's socioeconomic prosperity. So the choice now seems to be that with the DNC's lacking the stomach to fight, can Californians afford to wait for some magical way out of the MAGA-verse from gutless politicians 3,000 miles away? Or should we, as Californians, begin to take the threat to everything we hold dear seriously, realize the DNC cavalry isn't coming to California's rescue, and act here at home, on the nation, state, and local level? This is Voices for the California Nation.
People in our country illegally can self-deport the easy way, or they can get deported the hard way, and that's not pleasant. Now my administration is launching the CBP Home app, but if they do not avail themselves of this opportunity, then they will be found, they will be deported, and they will never be admitted again to the United States. Leave now and self-deport voluntarily, and you'll never be back again.
Let's keep this California resistance train rolling as we go to Jeanne Rosenmeier and Dr. Timothy Volmer for this excerpt from California Centric.
Hi, I'm Jeanne, and I'm here with Tim. We're going to talk about today what Independent California Institute is all about. You've been thinking. I hear you've been thinking.
Well, I've been thinking about our notion of like, what does it mean to be Cal-centric, which is, one of our pillars of the Institute is to sort of create a discussion or a narrative that is California-centric, which is why we named the podcast Cal-centric or California-centric. And I think that's a good place to begin.
So what does it mean to be California-centric?
Okay, so this is what I've been thinking about, how to explain it. And it doesn't really need that much work, but there are some things that helps. Like, I think Californians, to be Cal-centric, we kind of have to change what the word domestic means to us. That domestic affairs, the domestic national policy. I think California should stop kind of thinking of it in the U.S. terms, United States terms, and kind of like shrink it and have it fit our California life, our California society and culture, and our political structure and activities and debates and so. And do that in a kind of significant, healthy way, the way that, say, Canada talks about Canadian issues, and the way France or Germany talk about their domestic issues. And I think we're of a size and scale, we Californians, that it's kind of necessary if we want to keep a cohesive and well-running society going. If we want to make it, make California and everything that there is about us, our work, our activities, our lifestyle, if we want to make it as good and successful as we can, then we need to start talking about California. Domestic needs to start meaning California for us so that we can talk about California in very productive ways. I guess another way to put it is sort of, it's sort of leaning into the national part. I mean, we like to call California a nation state, and being Cal-centric, and I think the sort of reason we formed the Independent California Institute is to lean into the nation part, to lean into it. I think we reflexively talk about our California in a state, one of 50 state contexts. I kind of want to lean away from that for a couple of reasons and lean more into the nation, the national part. Again, because we are of a scale and size, and our place in the world kind of warrants it and needs it.
So in practical terms, what are we going to do? I mean, I know one thing we're doing is every week we publish a newsletter full of information and stories. We're essentially an aggregator of stories about California and things California is doing as an entity. What else can we do?
Well, so let's stop there just for a second, because I think the reason why we do it is in pursuance of creating a national discussion for Californians. That's a real national discussion. And, there's an obvious Eastern Seaboard, East Coast bias in our U.S. national news. I mean, we're kind of far away.
Duh. Yeah.
So
no kidding.
So not only are we of the scale to have a national Cal-centric discussion, and that we need it, we don't have the apparatus for it, though, unfortunately. What we do have is very centered toward the Eastern Seaboard. And if I would want to be provocative, I would say in a colonial way. I mean, everything in our worldview, in a sort of California gaze, if you want to put that, it defaults to an Eastern Seaboard gaze. That to us is natural. That to us is normal. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should sort of work away from that as much as we can. And I'm doing this mostly in my mind for practical reasons, so that we can run this fourth or fifth biggest economy, in the best way possible. And that we can support people in our society, support our communities in a direct way based on our values, rather than trying to go through a very Byzantine federal process.
It sounds like, in a way, what we're talking about is consciousness raising, like the old second wave women's movement. I think we need to raise our consciousness about California, and that's part of our mission, including taking polls of Californians and how we feel about California, but also talking about how big California is really, because people really don't understand that at all.
Californians don't understand it.
Californians don't, right.
We just think that the other states must live in this kind of state world of theirs like we do, but they don't. I mean, I was sort of oblivious to it until I lived on the East Coast for a couple of years, and it was so strange for me to drive through several states to get somewhere.
I get it. And another thing is that you don't realize how unique California is, because we're in the middle of it, but you see it all the time in our California culture is made fun of all over the country, and recognized. It is recognized, good or bad, by the rest of the states and the rest of the world.
In a very direct, obvious way, when I say CalCentric and what we're working on at the Institute, that it's political. I mean, it kind of has been forced upon us due to some political events of the last few years. And so we think of it that way. And I want to keep talking about that, but the political part. But even here, I want to make it CalCentric. That is, stop talking about how bad American democracy is and start talking about California democracy. We're kind of playing in, we're leaving a vacancy, a void, by always talking about what's going on in Washington, the United States. And I think even people like us who are interested in maximizing California autonomy, I think we fall prey to this in sort of talking about how horrible it is that we only have 2 senators and that these states the size of small California counties have them and so on. But while we're talking about that, and it's outrageous. It's not a democracy. We should be angry and talking about it. But when we talk about that, we're not talking about California's democracy, which is kind of similarly crazy. I mean, yeah, it's crazy to have 50 states, some of them super small, some like nation size. It's crazy to have 55 counties in California. And, 110 million, and Alpine, which is like 1,000, if that, or a couple thousand. I mean, when we keep trying to fix their problem, their issues, because it is kind of theirs, it reeks of the East Coast, our political issues, and the way America talks about it. And I think it's important to talk about that stuff, obviously, but we're powerless there. And I think being CalCentric is a way to empower ourselves.
All right. Where are we what's our next episode gonna be?
Discussing the nature and need for being more California-centric in the modern world. For more information about the Independent California Institute and to subscribe to their weekly newsletter, The Independent Californian, you can go to their website at ic.institute. That's ic.institute. In the interest of fair play, we have a dissenting opinion from our friend at the PBR podcast, Pedro Baez, on the dangers of government shutdown. Take it away, Pedro.
Hi, I'm Pedro Baez of the PBR, the Pedro Baez Report. A 70s thing has returned, the generation gap. This time it isn't amongst parents and children. It's among Democrats in Congress. Many of the young Democrats want all members of the party to vote nay on the congressional resolution to keep the government open. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer will vote yay on the bill when it comes to a vote. As a progressive, I always will vote with Democratic measures. However, on these issues, I have to disagree with my younger members of the party. As Senator Schumer said, a shutdown would get Trump a victory, and we don't need that. If there is a shutdown, who would it hurt? It would hurt those of us who need government services. I agree with Senator Schumer and urge all Senate Democrats to support this resolution. That's my opinion, and thank you for listening.
Other important news out of California, opposing an initiative to have California become an independent country. Secretary of State Dr. Shirley Ann Weber announced that the proponent of a new initiative was cleared to begin collecting petition signatures on January 23rd of this year, so on Thursday. The AG prepares the legal title and the summary that is required to appear on the initiative petitions. Official language is complete. The AG forwards it to the proponent and to the Secretary of State. Then the initiative circulates for signatures, which is where it's at now. If this is enacted, it will be on the November 2028 ballot should California leave the United States and become a free and independent country. If at least 50% of registered voters participate in that election and at least 55% say yes, it would constitute a vote of no confidence in the United States of America. So if you live in California, do you want to become an independent country? I am so curious to find out if this goes through in the next 4 years.
Hello, everyone. Matt Owen of Red Star Rising, filing a new report. And I have good news. I have the petition to break away from the U.S., for California to liberate itself from the U.S. Here it is. I have a copy, a master copy. Now, all I need to do is to find a place where I can get these copies for cheaper, because that thing set me back $3 a piece. So that's all I need. I have voter reg forms in here. And then the next phase will be to put these in the in front of the passenger seats in this buggy as I'm working, and get signatures on them. The next phase will be for some of the passengers who do sign it to get some forms for them to circulate. Then we build a base, very solidly anti-fascist, pro-California base, right here in the Santa Clara Valley. I've been through the courses, so I know what this entails. And those who want to join me in this effort, I'll give them the quick and dirty version, and then off we go. We can do this. We have the backing of 66%, 2/3 of Californians. And we intend to press that pedal right to the middle. Viva Gran California Libre.
This is a California resistance action item. To support Skid Row relief efforts in Los Angeles, you can find Los Angeles Community Action Network, known as LA CAN, at 838 East 6th Street, Los Angeles, California, 90021. You can phone them at 213-228-0024 or find them on the internet at canpress.org. That's CANGRESS.org.
Don't take cash for keys. Anybody have you sign anything and you're still in one of these Skid Row housing trust buildings or even any of the buildings and they look like they're trying to push you out, clear out the building, come and see us at Los Angeles Community Action Network at LA CAN. We have legal clinics. Our legal service provider is Legal Aid Foundation Los Angeles. They are there in our office in person on the first and third Wednesday. Cash for keys, you don't want to do that. I don't care if it's $400 or $4,000. It's illegal and you will end up on these streets because 7 bodies are dead every day when you're unhoused in these streets of LA. We'll talk to you about the Edwards Hotel and some of the other hotels under the Skid Row Housing Trust. Be aware, they are offering cash for keys. There were 4 tenants left in this building. One we know was offered cash for keys. They gave him only a few minutes to get some things out of his unit. He got his cat out and some bags. Some of his items are still in there. And they gave him $500 for cash. What you supposed to do with that $500 for cash? You're not going to be able to get a deposit. You're not going to be able to stay anywhere. Yeah, he's unhoused. For sure. For sure he's unhoused. And cash for keys is illegal. How dare you? How dare you even offer somebody that kind of situation and put them in that kind of place? You don't care about people when you do that.
In this edition of Planning Watch, Homelessness in LA, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, by Dick Platkin. Planning Watch. Homelessness is bad in LA, but it will get even worse for multiple reasons. Reason number 1, economic inequality is growing in the United States, pricing more people out of housing, especially in the racially integrated Altadena area, according to the Pew Research Center. Recent income gains were concentrated at the top. In contrast, middle-income families and the poor have experienced the greatest economic decline. The growth in income in recent decades has tilted to upper-income households. At the same time, the U.S. middle class, which once comprised the clear majority of Americans, is shrinking. Thus, a greater share of the nation's aggregated income is now going to upper-income households, and the share going to middle and lower class income households is falling. Number 2, the small minority of the U.S. population with rising incomes often invest in real estate, driving housing prices even higher, and pricing more people out of housing, according to the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, who say 11% of households in Los Angeles County can afford to purchase a median-priced single-family home here. This compares to 15% for California and 34% for the United States, and is down from 27% just 5 years earlier. Reason number 3, Refugees from the Palisades fire are bidding up housing prices in LA since they need a place to live. In contrast, the Altadena fire refugees do not have the same deep pockets, and many will sell their lots to developers and move to other neighborhoods. Reason number 4. Employee layoffs at the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, will result in fewer resources to help LA areas newly unhoused. According to NPR, the Community Planning and Development House at HUD disperses more than $3.6 billion in federal funding for federal rental assistance, mental health and substance use treatment, and outreach to get those living outside into shelter or housing. It's the backbone of local communities' response to homelessness in blue states and red states alike. Reason number 5. Tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China will increase the cost of building supplies, such as Canadian lumber. As a result, the time and cost of rebuilding homes destroyed by the fires will increase, according to CNBC. The new tariffs could increase builder costs anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000 per home, said Rob Dietz, chief economist at the National Association of Home Builders. Citing estimates from U.S. home builders, last year the NAHB estimated that every $1,000 increase in the median price of a new home prices out roughly 106,000 potential buyers. Reason number 6. Deporting undocumented immigrants will result in a shortage of construction workers, increasing the cost and slowing down the rebuilding of destroyed and damaged homes. According to a new study from the University of Utah Business School, mass deportations of undocumented immigrants has been touted by the incoming Trump administration as a way to increase jobs for U.S. citizens and reduce housing costs. However, a new study co-authored by a University of Utah business scholar concludes that such a policy would likely backfire because it would drain the construction workforce significantly, slowing an already sluggish rate of new residential construction. Reason number 7. High interest rates will continue because the Federal Reserve Bank uses them to control inflation. Since tariffs increase housing construction costs, the reconstruction of destroyed housing will be slower and more expensive. This too will increase homelessness. According to the Built website, higher interest rates have completely frozen the owner-occupied residential construction market. Average mortgage rates are at their highest levels since 2002, and mortgage applications have fallen to their lowest level since 1997. As a result, new authorizations for single-family units are down 17.3% year over year. So if even some of these predictions appear, homelessness will increase. Most of these trends have been underway since the presidency of Richard Nixon from 1968 to 1973, and Donald Trump's cutbacks and layoffs are making them qualitatively worse. Dick Platkin is a retired LA City planner who reports on local planning issues. He is a board member of United Neighborhoods for Los Angeles. Previous columns are available at the City Watch LA archives.
The ultimate resistance to U.S. fascism is California independence.
Hey, Donald, have we got a deal for you? You think we want to be the 51st state? Nah, but maybe California would like to be the 11th province. How about it? California, Oregon, Washington, you've got geography in common with us. And not only that, we've already got a carbon trading system between California and Quebec. We've got some strong alliances on our west coast from British Columbia. There's been a lot of academic papers on the idea of Cascadia. So California, Governor Newsom, and Washington State, Jay Inslee, and newly elected Governor of Oregon, Tina Kotek. How about it? Want to put a referendum to your citizens? Because this is what you deal. Have we got a deal for you? This is what you get. Free health care. Universal free health care. No more one-year-olds who suddenly fall off the Medicaid list and their parents are in the news because they're trying to do a GoFundMe so they can get their daughter to a doctor. Universal free health care. And guess what? Those gun laws that your Congress is too afraid to pass Because of the national gun lobby, we already got our strict gun laws.
Okay. We know Trump is looking to annex or possibly make war on Canada, but Canada? Really? Let's finish this with talking points. This is Talking Points. And really, I'm sure you've heard this one. Hey, maybe California should just join Canada, leaving this devolving United States to join Canada along with Oregon and the state of Washington. I mean, in some ways, I can see the appeal when we're all feeling a certain amount of empathy towards Canada, because the Trump regime, for some reason, wants to treat Canada as badly as America treats California. Looking at it not as a region with a unique land, culture, and character to be respected, but as real estate property full of faceless nobodies with an economic base and resources to be abused and exploited. So yeah, emotionally it makes sense. California could just join Canada, where we can suffer American hostility together, I guess. But no, because even if we as Californians ignore the Trump regime's chest-thumping about annexing Canada, which would be a little embarrassing if California left the U.S., joined Canada, and then got dragged back into the U.S. as Trump's MAGA America annexed Canada. If you think about it for a moment, the whole California joining Canada thing doesn't really make much sense anyway. Oh, don't get me wrong, big California love and respect to Canada and Canadians. It's just that California becoming a part of Canada isn't much of a solution and comes with its own set of problems. First off, there's the question that goes, why would the California Republic jump through all the flaming hoops needed to become an independent country just to trade one federal master 3,000 miles away for another? Because even according to the U.S. government, as of 2024, California has the largest subnational economy on the planet, and when California becomes a nation of its own, it would have the fourth highest GDP in the world on day one. That put California's standing in the G8 right above Germany and just below Japan, with a GDP of $4.08 trillion US dollars, making it obvious that a California republic as a nation would be perfectly capable of standing on its own financially. But what is not obvious here would be the donor state question. In contrast, Canada's GDP is globally respectable at $2.14 trillion US dollars, making it the 10th largest economy in the world, just behind Russia, but that's basically only half of California's overall economy. So, with roughly equal populations, if California joined Canada, one likely outcome would be that California would end up using its economic muscle to dominate Canadian politics. But there's also the possibility that an established Canadian central government would eventually use California's deep pockets for its own political agendas, just like the U.S. is using today, possibly starting the whole independence question all over, so neither outcome there is technically good. Then for Californians, there's also the dark side here, where the Canadian $2.4 trillion GDP is based largely on a highly U.S.-dependent drill baby drill fossil fuel economy that's heavily supported by the Canadian government, making that politically problematic for a California republic that already prides itself on being a leader in the climate change fight to reduce or eliminate fossil fuel use. So maybe California should join Canada, or maybe not, because other than the sigh of relief many Californians may get for not being part of the United States anymore, face it, aside from Commonwealth status and an unfamiliar sense of loyalty to the English royal family, for Californians, universal health care is still the best thing Canada can put on the table. But really, California tax dollars would have to pay for that anyway. And if California can stop dumping a staggering amount of blood and treasure every year into an out-of-control U.S. war machine, well, let's just say that universal health care wouldn't be a big lift for a free and independent California Republic as a nation with up to $1 trillion extra dollars to spend every year. So, on the maybe California should join Canada question, all kidding aside, I think Californians should respectfully opt out and end that distraction. Because with everything going on around us, Californians probably should refocus the discussion on California and the California resistance to U.S. federal hostility to our nation state and our communities vulnerable to oppression from Trump's devolving America. This is Talking Points. Okay, Rebels, that's podcast number 5 for the 2025 season. For more Red Star Report information, check out our website at redstarreport.com. Please subscribe to our Red Star Report YouTube channel. Go to our Red Star Report Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram, and TikTok, and give us a like, give us a follow. Because if you want to support the real California independence movement's hashtag #NewCalExitMedia Group, it's all about the algorithms. And seriously, click that link below and pledge support for our friends at listener-supported radio, KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles. Or better yet, call them up at 818-985-5735. Make a donation and tell them they need to put Red Star Report on the radio, because KPFK deserves your support. And a great new show. Our thanks to all our Red Star Rebels for watching. We are Red Star Report.